Okay, I think we can start now. And the people will start joining afterwards. So good morning, everyone. Good morning to all partners, to all the speakers and the people who is connecting in this morning. Thank you very much for being with us. First of all, I'd like to share some housekeeping kind of like rules. So we like you to have your cameras on, your mics off, if possible, as we did yesterday. It worked pretty well, and feel free to post your question in the chat. Today we are going to have a chat open for all your questions. Please, as soon as you hear something that you're interested, some of our team is going to be reading you as well, and you are going to be answered very soon. Yeah, thanks a lot for being here again. And yeah, we are going to show the agenda right now that we have for today. So for today, we are going to focus on the innovation labs, but also a brief recap from yesterday. Here you see the agenda. We are going to talk about 2 innovation labs, but yesterday we had the introduction for the first innovation lab, the one that's going to be summarized, of course, before of the breaking out sessions, the parallel sessions that we're going to have today. And we had also yesterday the opportunity to have 2 very important speakers. We had Peter Tlafla and also Svenja Minsky. They were giving very good insights about the achieving goals, about the nature-based solutions in the European Green Deal, and also how valuable trends and developments in the intersection of naturance and insurance had offering different provoking perspectives. Also, we had a chance to discuss with the different networks the knowledge networks that we are including in our Nature network. Here we had a very interesting discussion about disaster risk reduction, insurance, and nature-based solutions. Well, so we're going to start today first, like getting to know who is in the room. So I'll give the floor to Jacob.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Just like yesterday, we are going to do a quick Slido of just a few questions. I will get that up and going right now. So you can join with your phones or online with the code, and I will give you all just about a few seconds, 30 seconds to join, maybe a minute, and then we will begin with 3 questions. Just a little bit longer. And then no worries if you haven't joined yet, you can still join during, but I'll start and open the first question. Were you able to attend the Webstival yesterday? Yes, only for a sneak peek, or not at all? We got some fast answers in here. A lot of yes, okay. Alrighty. Most of you were here yesterday. Nice to see you again. I see we still have a few people that are new and joining, and we welcome you here. It will be a fun second day as well. I'll move on to the next question. Do you see the potential of the NATURANCE Innovation Labs to drive the NBIS and insurance agenda? Mostly for our participants from yesterday. We have the answers of yes, I don't know, and I'm not convinced. All of them are getting some attention. I like the yes answer. We're getting a lot of those. And I don't know, would like to learn more for our new participants today. And those of you that are not yet convinced, I'm sure today will convince you with our in-depth breakout groups, as well as other information about the innovation labs. But I'm glad to see yes as a resounding answer. And I will move on to our last question here. How important do you deem or think the knowledge networks are to drive the NBIS and insurance agenda? From our presentation yesterday from Laura about the knowledge networks. The answers are very essential, interesting, not yet convinced, or I'm curious to see if anybody has a knowledge network they want to propose that can contribute. Okay, Laura had a convincing presentation yesterday. We have a lot of very essentials. Interesting, but not yet convinced, maybe for a lot of those that were not here yesterday. So I'm sure you're going to learn a lot more about those today. And yeah, pretty split, but I'm glad that very essential is also the answer for today. I believe everybody has answered, so I will kick it back to Laura and share the presentation.
Thank you, Jacob. That was very, very good. Yeah, very interesting results as well. I'm very glad that some of yeses were there in the responses. So I'm also very looking forward for you to learn more about this, to participate in the innovation labs. We are going to have like this possibility to engage you all there. But first of all, I would like to give the floor to Victor, who is going to give us a very like the first introduction. Sorry, Guillermo, who will bring us the recap from the innovation lab number 1. So this innovation lab number 1 is how to quantify flood risk reduction and co-benefits of NBIS in the Netherlands. Yesterday we had like a very complete presentations but we were aware that today we're going to have like new audience. So I'll give the floor to Guillermo to bring us a little bit in context. Probably we are having a bit of maybe connection problems, but then probably Victor, would you like to maybe first give the first introduction of the innovation labs so we can
Sure, I'm happy to do so.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Welcome everyone. Great to see so many of you joining also today for our Innovation Lab session. So what we're gonna do, or what we like to do with you today, is that we gonna have 3 pitches, around 15 minutes each, of our first round of Innovation Labs. Each of them will sort of like present the idea of their or the first outline of their innovation lab, and we then go into breakout rooms. So you have to make a choice of which of the 3 innovation lab is the one that interests you the most, and you can think you could contribute. We do this after our pitches, and then we have around 45 minutes in the breakout rooms to have some in-depth discussion. So the host of each of the innovation labs have sort of like prepared some interesting discussion points and questions, and also have invited some guests so to have a more in-depth discussion. And the goal for today is to give you a better understanding what each of the innovation lab you've picked is about, an opportunity to ask your questions and how you could get involved, and also an opportunity for us to get to know you a bit better, and sort of like what you are particularly interested, and also what sort of like you think about the idea, and also get some feedback from you. Before we start, Laura already mentioned we had our first pitch yesterday of the Innovation Lab 1. I would like to ask if one of the people from the Free University are around to maybe give us just a few minutes of their time to recap of what they have presented yesterday, and then we move over to lab number 2, which is hosted by Joanne Linneruth Bayer and Jamie Pollard on harnessing insurance to promote nature-based solutions for wildfire risk management, followed by the third pitch by LSE on investing in natural flood management in urban areas in the UK. And with that, I would like to give the floor to one of our colleagues from the Free University to give us a quick recap from yesterday.
Yes, I will do the presentation. Thanks, Victor and Laura. So yes, the first innovation lab that Guillermo presented yesterday is about how to quantify flood risk reduction and co-benefits of nature-based solutions in the Netherlands. So this is about a specific case study that is being developed actually at the moment to give the rivers that were flooded in Limburg in 2021 more space to have better flood control systems. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the second. Okay, no, back to the first slide, sorry. Yeah, so this innovation lab is really about trying to figure out what are the different values generated by these type of nature-based solutions. So, for example, first of all, of course, the risk reduction. How do you measure the risk reduction of certain nature-based solutions? So that is, we will conduct a review of different types of modeling techniques that are out there to measure the risk reduction potential of nature-based solutions, and relate this also in particular to the Limburg case study, which the Dutch case study. And the second is, of course, the co-benefits. So besides the risk reduction, there are a lot more benefits, such as recreational values, for example, aesthetic values of more nature, but also more biodiversity, etc. So how do you measure these? That's also something that will come back in this innovation lab. So all these insights will be useful for, of course, stimulating insurers involvement in in these nature-based solutions or other types of financing schemes. So that is the goal of this innovation lab. And yes, that is a brief recap of this. Hopefully, we will see you in the breakout room later.
Great. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Victor, for the first introduction and the recap from the Innovation Lab number 1. And now we are going to have the second Innovation Lab presentation. So I'll give the floor to Joanne. Good morning, Joanne.
Good morning. And I think we worked out that I would share my screen on this. Is that okay? If you stop sharing, I'll start sharing.
Yes.
Thank you.
There you go. You should be able to share it.
Yeah, why doesn't it come on? There we go.
Yep, there we go.
Very good. Okay,
Perfect.
Thank you very much. And I will try to be short, 15 minutes, to introduce everybody to our Innovation Lab number 2, which is harnessing insurance to promote nature-based solutions for wildfire risk management. I'm organizing this Innovation Lab from IASA, also with Jamie Pollard, who's from Willis Towers Watson, and he will be facilitating in the breakout session. I'd like to just point out that we are doing this Innovation Lab in close partnership with 2 other European Horizon projects, FireLog and the HUT. Oh dear. Right, it's not moving down. Oh dear. Only when we rehearsed it, it was fine. Okay, I think I will have to turn it back over to you.
Or try to stop sharing and share it again. Maybe works like this.
Try.
But this is normal. This happens all the time, even though we rehearse, and yeah, this is more than normal. And I think all in the room we have been through this, so no worries.
Okay, we'll try again.
Yes.
I hope it works this time. Let's see. Yeah.
There we go.
All right. Okay, so as I said, we're doing this in partnership with 2 other projects, and in fact, the first meeting of our NATURANCE Innovation Lab will take place with the FireLog NATURANCE Wildfire Insurance Working Group, which is meeting in the 4th to 6th of July in Solsona, Spain. And so as I go through my presentation, it'd be great if you would think about asking yourself 3 questions. Are we asking the right questions for our innovation lab, which will be taking place in Solsona? What are your thoughts and ideas? And are you interested in participating? And now it's not going to move on. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm going to give you three motivations for why you might want to join our innovation lab. First, as you probably know, wildfire risk is increasing due mainly to climate change and urbanization. In fact, the WMO predicts that the number of extreme fires globally will grow 14% by 2030 and 30% by 2050. I wonder if I could be pressing some wrong buttons here. I don't know. I think you're going to have to do this for me.
No worries. We got ya.
Maybe let me try now. Oh, okay. Okay. So, all right, let's move to the next slide. Okay, let's go to the second motivation for joining the Innovation Lab. I'm sure you've seen some pictures of this. This is the air recently in New York City. We're calling it the orange smog. And this is coming from very distant wildfires in Canada. And it's actually dangerous. In the United States, they have estimated that wildfires have generated 25 to 50% of atmospheric small particle particulates. So next slide, please. And the third motivation, which for me anyway, is one of the most important ones, is that wildfire risk is definitely embedded in existential risks of climate change and biodiversity loss. This recent quote from UNEP: if the world is to meet the climate change, biodiversity, and land degradation targets, it needs to close a US $11 trillion financing gap in nature by 2050, which definitely emphasizes the absolute essentiality of considering nature-based solutions in any kind of wildfire risk management strategy. Next slide, please. Okay, click, please. Okay, so stop there. This is the main question that we're addressing for our innovation lab, and that is, how can we make use of insurance mechanisms for promoting nature-based solutions for wildfire? And to address this question, we've got to consider 3 additional questions, which is going to be a central part of our innovation lab. First is, click please, what is in fact the wildfire insurance landscape? And that we will be examining mainly in Europe. Second, please, what are actually nature-based solutions for wildfire? And third, please, is how can we make use of insurance, forgetting about wildfire, how can we make use of insurance for nature-based solutions? We are going to look at the nexus of those 3 questions and ask our central question, insurance for wildfire NBIS. Next slide, please. First, I'm going to go through each of these questions, which are going to be part of our innovation lab. First, let's look at the wildfire insurance landscape. Next slide, please. And I have to start with this recent headline from the Financial Times just 3 days ago. And the headline was, what happens when the US is uninsurable? And this is not far off for Europe as well. And interesting, this headline was inspired by an announcement by State Farm, which is the US third largest property insurer. And State Farm says it will no longer offer cover for wildfire across all of California. I'll come back to this, what this actually will mean. And other insurers are also reducing cover and raising premiums. Next slide. Okay, so what's some background on wildfire insurance? Well, most losses are covered by standard property insurance, or in some cases, especially in Europe, say Spain, France, there's also hazard or calamity insurance extra. Among four perils, earthquakes, storms, floods, and wildfires, wildfire losses have accounted for the smallest share of economic losses. Actually, it's not a big loss event, or has not been, and the highest level of insurance coverage. This is global. You'll see these just from these statistics from Munich Re 2018 to 22. Wildfires, 69 billion in losses, 39 billion insured. Flood, a much bigger loss event globally, 300 billion losses, 45 billion insured. Even though there's large insurance, there still is an insurance gap very much expected in Europe. Next slide, please. So, insurance for wildfire. There's a lot of different insurance products that cover wildfire losses. There's property assets, forest timber, crops, automobile, lives, health, business disruption, ecosystems. There's different types of products, indemnity, parametric. There's also different systems. There's some that are very much public, some that are very much private, and many in between. We're going to be focusing on our innovation lab on, click please, on property assets, forest and timber, yeah, those two. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the question for our innovation lab is, how can Europe address the growing insurance gap in a smart way? That is equitable and contributes to mitigating climate change and biodiversity loss with nature-based solutions. So next slide, I'm going to move to the second question, which we're going to be looking at. That is, what are NBISs for wildfire? Next slide. First, what are NBISs? According to the UN Environment Assembly in number 5, NBISs are actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, simultaneously providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. I want to emphasize the word biodiversity. In fact, the European Commission has said if it does not support biodiversity, it is not a nature-based solution. Next slide, please. So what are nature-based solutions for wildfire? Well, for that question, we're going to be looking at the wildland-urban interface, and also, click please, and also forests. That is the context in which we're looking for nature-based solutions. And so next slide, please. Almost everybody can agree on what is not an NBIS for wildfire. And you'll see in these pictures what the so-called fire bombers, which in fact are taking most of the funding that we have for wildfire risk management. Click please. According to Marsh McClellan, this is causing a firefighting trap in which spiraling fire suppression costs consume budget for investment in fire prevention, therefore contributing to increased fire risks. So if this is not an NBIS, what is? Next slide, please. Here we have far less agreement. I'll point out two different perspectives. First is what you see in these pictures. It's the ecological forestry perspective, which says our NBIS is thinning the forests, allowing maybe some grazing in the forest, controlled burns, all to reduce the fuel load. And this, of course, now you can exploit forest products with this perspective. There's a counter perspective, which I'm calling conservation rewilding. Click, please. And you'll see this picture, which I actually took in the Vienna woods, where you have a much, much more cluttered, messy forest, which is not good for wildfire, but is very good for biodiversity. So, we've got a trade-off we have to consider here. Next slide, please. In fact, this trade-off has become a contestation in California, where there's a court case going on between an NGO, the California Chaparral Institute, versus CAL FIRE, which is the California department to deal with fires. Just a quote from Chaparral Institute: "We cannot control wild nature by turning it into a managed garden, replacing rich chaparral habitats with isolated clusters of shrubs, surrounded by flammable invasive weeds, and creating artificial park-like forests with chainsaws, grinding machines, and herbicides." So you see, this is turning into some contention, definitely a conflict, and it's incredibly important if we're going to look at what insurance is going to promote. Where do we stand on this? Okay, move please to the next slide. So our question: what are different perspectives on NBIS for wildfire in the forest context, and why does it matter? Okay, I'll go to the third question we're going to look at, the third and last one. How can insurance actually promote nature-based solutions? And I'm quickly going to go through 7 ways that we have found with examples. I'm sure you'll have more examples, and I'm hoping this will kind of inspire some discussion in the breakout section. So if we go to the next slide, the first case is that insurers can transfer the risk of nature-based solution loss and damage, what they call underwriting nature. This is kind of standard insurance. And in examples, Swiss Re and the Nature Conservancy have implemented a parametric insurance product that provides payouts after a hurricane to repair coral reefs. Regional governments in Mexico have purchased the product to help protect the Mesoamerican reef. Okay, next slide. Number 2, insurers can incentivize nature-based solutions with premium reductions. And actually, there's a study by Nature Conservancy and Willis Towers Watson, which has showed that ecological forestry, remember, ecological forestry means thinning and controlled burns, reduce fuel load. In California's French Meadows National Forest could lead to a decrease in insurance premium by 41% for homes. Next slide, please. And third, discourage development with high premiums or insurance withdrawal. I've already told you about this. This is happening in California. And keep in mind, if all fire insurance policies get canceled in California, you cannot buy a house or you cannot get a mortgage without fire insurance. Yeah? So fire insurance in California and much of Europe is required for a mortgage. This will greatly discourage building in high-risk areas and could lead to retreat. Very, very powerful development. Next slide, please. De-risk nature-based solutions. The town of Ruidoso, if I'm saying it right, Ruidoso, in the US state of New Mexico was nearly destroyed by a wildfire originating from a controlled burn by the US Forestry Service. Does the US Forestry Service have insurance? I'm not sure, but certainly they won't do a lot of controlled burns if they don't. So insurance can transfer liability risk from losses to property and assets, health impacts from smoke. In fact, wildfire smoke is responsible for some 5 to 8% of annual premature deaths from air pollution in the US, and from firefighting costs, which can be up to $3 million a day. So number 5, insurance can actually facilitate carbon markets. Swiss Re is partnering with Conservation International to facilitate carbon credit markets by covering loss and damage, for example, to mangroves and forests from extreme weather, and the premiums would be paid in part with carbon credits. A very innovative idea. Next slide, please. Insurers can just donate to nature. And this is amazing. Aviva, which is one of Britain's largest insurers, announces a £38 million donation to help Wildfire Trust to restore Britain's lost biodiverse rainforests. According to Aviva, this will address the climate and biodiversity crisis, as well as support flood protection and resilience. Indeed, Aviva claims to be the first major insurer worldwide to target net zero carbon by 2040. And now I'll turn to the very last slide, or last case we have, and that's green investment and very powerful divestment from nature negative assets. Insurers have large investment portfolios the US insurance industry alone has 1.4 trillion in capital. They invested. And so while many, but not to lead on a end on a negative note, but to emphasize that we do have a long way to go. A quote by McKinsey recent, while many insurers have begun to incorporate climate risk considerations in their investment processes, new product launches and underwriting processes are mostly unchanged. So last slide, please. I want to just a question, of course, how can these examples, some of them were addressing wildfire, but how could the others address wildfire? You can see the list here, and we'll turn back to that in our breakout session. So last slide is simply to thank you, and we hope you will join us in the breakout session.
Thank you very much, Joanne. This is definitely very interesting and very, very current topic that I think many of us now, because of the news, now we are being more and more aware of now. If we as experts in the topic, yeah, we have been much aware, but now because of these events, now these topics are hitting the minds of many people as well. So it's very, 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 very good that you are also approaching this topic in this innovation lab. Thank you very much. So we hope that you, the audience, are also having your interest there, and then at the end, we are going to join the breakout rooms, and it will be very, very, very interesting. Thank you, Joanne. And now we are heading to our third Innovation Lab presentation. This is about investing in natural flood management in urban areas in the UK. So here I give the floor again to Victor. So please give us the insight for the Innovation Lab number 3.
Yep, thank you, Laura. Thank you very much for the introduction. If we could move to the first slide, and I would give you a bit of an first overview what we're planning to do. So I think compared to the other 2 innovation labs you have already seen, I think we are a bit less advanced in the sense that we don't have fixed dates yet for our planned innovation labs. And so I think we also in a stage, we also really value your input. So please keep that in mind while you listen to the presentation, and also please feel free to roast us in the breakout room. And we would really like to hear your thoughts and ideas about this topic. Just a bit of background why we were interested in this topic. So as a UK-based institution, I think we're quite involved in a lot of the work that's going on flood risk management in the UK. And we thought also, given sort of the networks we have there, we could have the most impact. And especially in terms of natural flood management, there's a lot of movement at the moment. There's almost on a daily basis, new reports, projects, and so on launched. So we also felt it's now a good time to have this discussion and see where insurance can add value in these processes when it comes to nature-based solution and natural flood management. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, for those who don't know us, I'm Victor Rützer, and together with my 2 colleagues, Svenja Sominski and Joy Kara, we work at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change and the Environment at the London School of Economics. The institute was established in 2008 as a multidisciplinary center for policy relevant research and training on climate change and the environment. It is chaired and also initially funded by Nicholas Stern. And our research and policy activities cover quite a few things, and NATURANCE brings quite a few of those pillars we work on together, ranging from green finance and biodiversity to adaptation, as well as climate change litigation. I just put a few projects. One of our larger flagship projects, our research institute is involved. So there's a big green finance project called Inspire. We have a large project called the Transition Pathway Initiative, focusing on how company and businesses sort of like can account for their carbon emissions to become greener. We are involved in the Climate Change Committee on Special Adaptation, and we're also part of the Zurich Flood Resilience Alliance, like a multi-stakeholder partnership focusing on how to make communities across the world more resilient to flooding. Next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of background about the UK situation when it comes to flooding, around 5.8 million properties across the UK are at risk of flooding. Sort of like the latest estimates on the expected annual damage going into the future are around 730 million and expected annual damages per year. Urban flood risk is the dominant form of flood risk. The UK is quite an urbanized country. And there are a number of estimates on sort of like in terms of like the finance gap and how much needs to be invested in the coming decades in flood risk management. So the Green Finance Institute estimates there's like a 56 million a year needed over the next decade for natural flood management in England and Wales to reduce flood risk. And the National Infrastructure Commission estimates another 0.4 billion a year over so like the next 30 years to address surface water flooding in urban areas in England. That has a lot to do that here in the UK we have quite an old urban sewage and drainage systems, and sort of like with growing populations they increasingly reach their, and aging infrastructure increasingly reach their sort of like capacity, which means it leads to increased surface water flooding, and that's also where nature-based solutions or natural flood management can play an important role. Next slide, please. So what are we talking about? So I've tried to sort of like come up with a bit of a typology. Please also challenge me on that. I think that's sort of like how I made sense of all these different terms that float around in this context. So I think sort of like the umbrella term is like nature-based solutions. We heard from Joanne, I think one important criteria is that it actually adds to biodiversity. So if, for example, your green roof is simply made of grass, it probably won't qualify, but if you sort of like create sort of like some small habitat, it would qualify. We have like something called, we refer to as green infrastructure. There's different terminologies floating around. I sort of like see this more as an urban kind of measure, often done on the building to neighborhood scale. We see sort of like green roofs, but we also see what in the UK is called sustainable urban drainage system. And one of the main goals of this is, apart from sort of like having like creating microhabitats that also add sort of like help supporting sort of fighting biodiversity loss. It's also helping to infiltrate rainwater, which then sort of like would not end up in sort of like the grey sewage infrastructure. There are studies who like looked into how much does sort of like do these urban measures contribute to biodiversity, and some of the takeaways from most of the papers were that they can be, if they're done well, essentially be as good as sort of like a rural sort of like biodiversity strengthening measure, which I think is quite promising, even though it's very small scale. Then we have natural flood management, which is often more rural. It's more on the sort of like catchment or sub-catchment scale. And what we see in this little picture is some river restoration, or anything that has to do with like giving the river more space, or like planting forests in the upper part of the catchment to hold more of the water back. Next slide, please. So on the next, on this slide, I want to talk a bit about where we are currently with investing in nature-based solutions. And I've picked up something that was recently announced by the Green Finance Institute, which is the UK investment toolkit for investment-ready nature projects, which lines out the steps that need to be taken to actually get a nature-based solution investment ready. And there's three pillars for investment readiness. The first one is profitability. So our proposed financial obligation, including the returns on investments, can be met. Delivering the environmental outcomes. So everything that sort of like we've promised that they should deliver, that they can actually show that they will deliver. And then if you could just click one slide forward or one step forward. Thank you. And then there's the secure part, which I think is an interesting one, because I think that's where actually insurance can come in, is that any risks that threaten the project are mitigated or managed. And if you go to the next slide, please. And I think the managing these risks is not a trivial task, because I put this picture on the top right as an example. So we all love beavers, but I think they're not technically, also I think DEA has once mentioned that, I think they're not technically our employees, so we cannot exactly tell them what they do. So I think there is some risk involved. And sort of if you look in sort of like the working with natural processes, guidelines for the Environment Agency, which will be updated this year. A lot of the sort of like pilot projects, they show sort of like a low to medium level of scientific confidence that what they're actually contributing to the flood risk benefits. And I think the way to see this or to understand this, it has a lot to do with sort of like, it's about the uncertainty. It's not so much that they don't work, it's more sort of like there is some variation whether they work or not. And together with long investment timeframes and difficulties, because of these uncertainties, difficulties quantifying the costs and benefits, make nature-based solutions or natural flood management often a risky and new asset class for investors. So I think there's like a lot of investors shy away at the moment. So I think there's a real opportunity here for insurance to come in and sort of like take ownership and help sort of like making these nature-based solutions an investable proposition. The one way this could work is, I think what also Joanna mentioned, is de-risking investments in nature-based solutions. And there's a double materiality here for unlocking these investments in nature-based solutions for insurers, or at least that's how we see it. There is sort of like the flood risk reduction from the NBIS, so like assets that are sort of like currently insured, so like there will be a flood reduction element, which means that they can be insured in the future, which I think we refer to as nature for insurance. But there's also an opportunity for new markets and insurance products, so like actually providing insurance for nature or for these nature-based solutions. There's another complicating factor if we think of urban structures, and that's what you see on the right. That's sort of like there's a mix between public and private owned land, which basically means a lot of different people will will have costs and different people will have benefits. So these need to be sort of like also like distributed over both sort of like the all the different stakeholders, but also over time. Next slide, please. What I want to show now is sort of like I would like to show two case studies where sort of like nature-based solutions are used, not necessarily in an insurance context, but where we believe there is potential for insurance to come in. And the first one I wanted to show is, and I think many of you have probably seen this, who are in this space, is in Washington, DC. There was a challenge with the stormwater runoff. There's just too much runoff because of sealed surfaces, and the infrastructure the current infrastructure just wouldn't be fit for purpose. So it would roughly take $7 billion to fix this, while sort of like the annual budget of the public body, which is responsible, was 10 million annually. So there's quite a big gap here. And one solution they came up with is essentially what they call stormwater credits. So every new property development, they have the choice to either pay a fee to the regulator or buy stormwater credits, because they will be responsible for whatever additional rainwater or stormwater they generate because of sealed surfaces. There's a real or the challenge here is that, I mean, it's a great way, and it's like a market mechanism to distribute sort of like these measures, and also make sure that sort of like the measures are put in place where they make most sense. Because if you only do it on your own property, it might not be the most effective way, because it could even affect neighboring properties. While this means that sort of like the regulator can basically encourage voluntary green infrastructure projects to build in these places where they make sense, and these projects can make money by selling these stormwater credits. But the problem is that there's no guarantee, so to guarantee a price and make it attractive as an investment for to invest in these green infrastructure project, there need to be a price floor. And this price floor is currently sort of like set by the regulator, who will buy them no matter what at this minimum price, which just means sort of like that the market doesn't fail. That means that the Department of Energy and Environment essentially owns the risk. And sort of like the recent sort of like what comes out of these case studies, that they actually would like to get out of this entirely and have this market basically run on its own. And I think that's just where insurance could come in, having a lot of experience with sort of like certification of specific standards for protection and so on. That sort of like combining this with something, for example, like a certification standard for property flood resilience, could ensure that sort of like these SRC or these like stormwater credits are actually sort of like deliver what they promise to deliver, and also sort of like can be insured and in case sort of like they fail. Next slide, please. The second example is also from the US, which is flood insurance discount in the National Flood Insurance Program. And so for those who don't know, so the National Flood Insurance Program is sort of like a state-run flood insurance program, which I think has received in the past quite a bit of criticism in terms of like incentivizing like moral hazard and like new risk created. But there's also an interesting mechanism called the community rating system that allows for premium discounts between 5 and 45% in communities who can show that they have implemented specific flood risk reduction measures. This discount is financed through a levy that's paid by all policyholders. So essentially, you get back your additional payments by sort of like implementing these measures. And what I think gets interesting for nature-based solutions is that green infrastructure and natural flood management solutions are one of these accredited measures that can make a community qualify for this premium discount. So I think this is another example where sort of like there is a direct way to incentivize green infrastructure and natural flood management. There are some recent studies that came out that sort of like that includes both green and gray infrastructure, that stormwater and floodplain management of all these measures that fall under the CRS are actually effective in reducing damages. There is sort of like a long-term sort of like small net gain, but this is only considering the avoided flood damages. So I think they don't consider at all the net gains for nature and biodiversity at the moment. And so I think there's a real opportunity here to strengthen and also transfer this to other places like the UK and strengthen the green infrastructure natural flood element of this, and basically make sure more of these measures get accredited and then would qualify for something like a premium reduction. Next slide, please. So coming back to the Innovation Lab, so what is the actual challenge we want to tackle? And the main idea we had, and we are open to also discuss this in the breakout room with you, and we are open to have like sort of like your views and suggestions. But I think what we initially thought we would focus on is how insurance can help de-risk investments in green infrastructure and natural flood management for both public and private investors in urban areas in the UK. So how can we sort of like unlock these investments? There's a lot of people who are willing to invest in these areas, but I think they probably at the moment still shy away because they're seen as generally a too risky investment. And that's also sort of like the regulator's view, which is, I think, a whole different story. So our idea is like who should be involved in to address this challenge. So I mean, quite obviously, sort of like people who or like experts who have an idea of like how nature-based solutions work, what they deliver and what they can deliver. insurance, green finance experts, but also the people who own land and property, because where it's going to be implemented, I think that's an important aspect. Local councils, because they are also big, they are locally responsible for flood risk management, so they are an important partner. Property developers, mortgage providers, sort of like the relevant agency. In the UK, it's the Environment Agency. Technology provider, community groups, but it might as well be that we forgot someone. So we're also really looking for your input and ideas who else we can and should include in these innovation labs. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, so the next thing we were planning to do after this breakout session to take in your ideas and also sort of like if we're noting your interest, if you're interested in getting involved, we would then sort of like planning for an LSE Innovation Lab webinar where we want to give the participants the opportunity to give sort of like short presentations on their perspectives on sort of like what they think should be brought to the Innovation Lab, and also have a panel discussion to identify some of the key roadblocks. We would then, based on this, go into the planning phase in Q3 this year, and then running the Innovation Lab towards the end of the year. If you're interested in participating, or if you want to get involved in other ways, and I think we're particularly interested also in those who currently have or are involved in green infrastructure and natural flood management projects that would benefit from insurance in the UK. So please get in touch. And with that, I would like to just close with a quick summary. So what we've talked about, nature-based solutions are key to reduce and adapt to climate-related risk while fighting loss of biodiversity and natural habitats. They have many co-benefits for biodiversity, but also for mental and physical health of the people who live around them. But it can be difficult to raise funds for these projects, especially from private investors, as mentioned, because of the high risks and difficulties to quantifying the costs and benefits. It's further complicated by the ownership structures and space constraints in urban areas. We believe that risk transfer and insurance can help to de-risk these investments, while there's also a clear business case for insurers, as sort of like they would not only be able to provide like a new service, but also benefit ultimately from the risk reduction. Although I think this is also something that I guess there's different views on this. The Innovation Lab will bring together the relevant stakeholders and develop an innovative business case on how we can support investments in natural flood management and green infrastructure in urban areas in the UK. With that, I would like to close and hand back to Laura.
Thank you very much, Victor. That's very, very interesting. And I already took a note from the July 14th. Definitely we are going to be there. This is very, very interesting. And because normally we are not very much aware that the urban areas can be flooded because of this like not able, like the water is just it stays there, is impermeable. So and then comes this new action, the nature-based solutions that involves biodiversity are the ones that we are aiming for as well here in our project. So for the audience, yeah, so we like to open floor for questions regarding before the breakout sessions. So the idea is that in the breakout sessions, you are going to choose one of these three labs. After the break, we are going to have like a brief summary of all three for you to go in the rooms. But now, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. Then we are going to like have a read. We are going to read it, and members of our innovation labs will also answer. So I think for now, if you all agree, if there is no question so far, or if you are still shy, if you need a coffee or something, then maybe we can wait a second. There is one question here. So if you are unable to attend the initial lab session in person, but can virtually, does that immediately rule you as a participant for the lab? So this is a question from Elizabeth Borner. So then if there is not answered yet, then, or Victor?
Just to clarify what is meant by the initial lab session. I'm not sure if Elizabeth feels comfortable to quickly advise this. Hi.
Yes, no, if you're unable to attend, like the dates Joanne mentioned, for example, if you're unable to do that because you won't have your passport at that time, but you're interested in the project, you could attend virtually but not physically. Does that mean you wouldn't be able to participate in the project if otherwise your skill set and interest were a match? Does that help?
Perfect, thank you. I think if it's very specifically about Innovation Lab 2, I would hand over to Joanne. Otherwise, I can also say something about it, I guess, from Lab 3 perspective.
Yeah, just maybe a word there. Yes, I think, if you're interested in the Wildfire Innovation Lab, I think the best thing is to get in touch with one of us. And then we can figure out exactly how it might work that you would participate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that helps, and would be great to. I imagine it's the same for Victor and in Lab 1 as well.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. I think depending on sort of like the nature of the lab, I think there's different opportunities to participate. So I think there's the lab itself, but I think there will also be follow-up activities. So I think in Joanne's case, I think there will be a follow-up in terms of like potential pilots. I think in our case that we would very much look for sort of like something that some activity that makes sure the innovation lives on and gets actually implemented. So if there's specific pilots that can be sort of like done on the ground, so I think there's an opportunity. So I think there's probably different stages on which you can participate. And I think in our case also, I think there will be several dates for individual sessions for innovation labs. So I think as much as we would like to keep it consistent, I think it will be hybrid in our case. And so like if there's people who want to join online and can maybe join one of them in person, I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I should add to that, because some of you missed, of course, Victor's presentation yesterday where he explained the labs. Yeah, I mean, the labs are continuing. We're having our first meeting in Solsona, and very soon, but we're going to be continuing probably over the next year, maybe even 2 years. And eventually we want to focus in actually on a case study in Sardinia on wildfire and developing insurance products. So you can see it's kind of a long term, and we definitely want to know who is actually interested in participating and what they might bring to the lab.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for your question, and Joanne and Victor for your active and very insightful answers. Yes, like I encourage as well other members of the audience. I know that maybe like speaking out loud could be very like scary sometimes, but put the questions in chat if you have any, or if not, then the discussions will continue in the breakout rooms. So if there is not popping questions right now, I think we can go for a 15 minutes break. So grab a drink, grab a coffee, stretch yourselves, and bring all your energy for the breakout sessions. We are going to have, like, as I said, brief summary of these three for remembering what is these three innovation labs about. And then we are gonna get into these breakout rooms. So then see you in 15 minutes at 10:25, more or less. So welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a very nice break. I hope you had the chance to drink something, stretch yourselves, prepare for the breakout rooms. We're gonna give a little a couple of seconds for people to start rejoining. So yeah, maybe a couple of seconds more. Good. So yeah, welcome back to our WebStival. And as we mentioned before, we are having a parallel session to go deeper into the topics, sorry, that were presented so far. But before this, we will have a summary of the 3 topics of the innovation labs for you, like wisely choose which one are you more interested, and also why that, like, for example, all the questions that you had so far, there can be answered. And of course, they will like you to be very active and you can share your thoughts also. Yeah, this is like the aim of this exercise. So for this summary, I will give the floor to Victor to give us like the brief presentation of the breakout rooms and also like very general instructions for it. So, Victor.
Yep. Welcome back, everyone. Would it be possible to show the slides again?
Sure. Wait a second.
Perfect. Welcome back, everyone. Also for those who might just have joined, I appreciate, especially being based in the UK, that this has been an early start for all of us. I think what I would like to do first, give you a bit of an explanation of what we're planning to do for the next 45 minutes or so. So the first thing is like, after you've heard now sort of like those 3 pitches, that I would like the leads of all 3 of the breakout sessions to maybe give like a 2-sentence summary about what their topic and breakout session will be about. And then we will offer you the choice to go in each of the, in one of the 3 breakout rooms. Depending on what you think for you personally is most interesting, but also where you feel like you could contribute. In all 3 of the innovation labs, we have like slightly different formats, but sort of like what they all have in common is that we would really encourage your active participation. I think it's always hard in these like really big rooms, but if we can get sort of like in a smaller space with perhaps a few less people, we would really hope that we can have a more in-depth discussion. And we would also like to hear your feedback, your thoughts, potentially projects. I've already seen sort of like some interesting project being put out in the comments about the UK. So yeah, keep them coming, and also especially in the breakout sessions. And we'd also like to hear your experiences, your views, and also trying to find out who you are and how you could contribute. With that, I would like to start with the first lab and like to ask one of the lab leads, either Max or Guillermo, to basically in 2 sentences explain what their breakout session will be about and what their topic is about.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. So the first lab is the one we presented yesterday, and it will focus on improving the methods to assess both the risk reduction benefits and co-benefits of nature-based solution. We are using the case study of Limburg because there's some hybrid and nature-based solutions being planned there for the future, and it was one of the regions affected by the 2021 floods, which has devastating effects. So that's why we chose it as a case study, and we will look at both risk modeling and stated preferences, in particular choice experiments to measure the co-benefits.
Perfect. Thank you, Guillermo. Joanne or Jamie, do you want to quickly talk about Innovation Lab 2?
Sure. Thanks, Victor. So as Joanne outlined, our Innovation Lab breakout room will be focused on wildfire risk management. And what we're hoping to do over the 45 minutes is to begin by picking up those 7 areas in which the insurance industry actors and the tools and the techniques that they have developed can promote nature positive outcomes. And we want to take that broad discussion to then think about some specific case studies, maybe discuss some of the ones that Joanne mentioned in a bit more detail, but also ask you if you're aware of places where the insurance industry has intersected with and promoted nature-based solutions. And then ultimately, we want to use this session as a opportunity to think a bit more about the specific question around the extent to which insurance-related approaches and products and systems can apply to wildfire risk management.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to briefly talk about Lab 3. You've just heard it before the break. We are interested in how insurance can support investments in nature-based solutions or like natural flood management and green infrastructure in urban areas in the UK. We would like to sort of like both hear from you, sort of like if you have any experiences, doesn't need to be from the UK, can be from wherever you work and live. And we would also be interested to sort of like hear your background and sort of like your relationship with the topic, and sort of like basically also use this as like a starting point for the discussions on the actual innovation lab and who we should include. And so we really also looking forward for your active contribution, and we will also share some ideas and discussion points that we have where we sort of like have thoughts, but we would also like to hear your ideas and reflections on it. Before we now sort of like, you should soon see sort of like a little button that tells you which breakout room you want, where you can pick a breakout room you want to join. Just before that, so like we will roughly have, and I think Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, like I think roughly 45 minutes now. And we then will come back, and in each innovation lab, there is one person who's moderating and another person who's taking note and also sort of summarize some of the findings. And we will also at the end of the innovation in the breakout room, a quick recap and summary. And then if we go into the main rooms, each of them will report on the outcomes and summaries. So we all have the opportunity, for those of you who are like interested in more than one innovation lab and like having difficulties deciding, this is your opportunity also learn about the other ones and some of the outcomes, even if you might not be in the breakout session, just to mention this. And yeah, with that, I would like to ask the team to open the breakout rooms.
Okay, everybody, thank you for your participation. Sorry, thank you for your participation in every single of the breakout rooms. I hope that you had like very interesting ideas shared, and also a lot of information that was very interesting in every single room. So the next bit that we like to that the next section that we are having now is to like share the lessons learned and from the innovation labs and the next steps that they were identified in every single breakout room. So here we're going to have the three leaders of the innovation labs, and they are going to share with us these aspects. For example, yeah, the people that were not able to be in the other breakout rooms have also an idea what they were talking about, and the challenges that they also identify, and next steps. So we are going to start with the innovation lab number 1. So Guillermo or Max, I would like to ask you what were the main outcomes of your sessions. If you have any surprising challenges or insights that you gained from these sections, yeah, tell us. And if you had like a next steps identify, please share them with us.
Thank you, Laura. So I will well start the summary, and Guillermo, you took the notes during the session, so please well, back me up if I'm missing anything. So first of all, this session was about, of course, the measuring the new measurement techniques, well, for the regarding risk reduction, but also co-benefits of nature-based solutions, which could feed into financing schemes. So first of all, well, we determined perhaps a more holistic overview of co-benefits is needed. So instead of trying to measure each specific benefit, such as the recreational value of a nature-based solution, or perhaps biodiversity, we need more holistic assessments with the existing techniques that are out there, such as choice experiments or other types of survey techniques. Yeah, well, another difficulty, of course, is that we cannot cache everything, or not everything that is monetized in these types of techniques are actually able to be, well, people do not make, or the parties involved do not make money from this. So that is also something that should be regarded in these financing techniques. Let me see, what else did I write down? Yes, so nature-based solutions, of course, are, well, it's established that it's good for society, more green, more involvement of nature in risk reduction, but well, also parties want some type of reinsurance, right? So perhaps a combination of nature-based solutions with existing, well, traditional types of risk reduction measures, such as dikes for flooding, for example, should be combined, or could be combined. Also because that is more easy to be quantified. So the benefit of these types of measures is, of course, easier to quantify with existing methods, at least. Yeah, Guillermo, did I miss something out?
No, I think you covered most of the discussion. I think it was also quite interesting when they were discussing that when insurance company invests in flood risk, like in a nature-based solution in a certain area, then there might be some more, I don't know what's the word that feeling used, but maybe more pessimistic or negative view that they will not be willing to do so because some other insurers, some other households are insured by different companies. And then the insurance company that invests in this solution is actually allowing the others to free ride, which I thought it was also like an interesting challenge on implementation for insurance sector. So, but I think you cover most of the discussion, Max, according to my notes.
Yes, thank you, Guillermo. So indeed, yeah, more well, very elaborate rights should perhaps be established, right? So if an insurer or any other party invests in nature-based solutions, then they should also be able to reap the benefits. Yes, thank you, Laura.
Great. And for example, is there any next steps in this innovation lab that you would like to share with us? What is next with this innovation lab?
Yes, oh yeah, that's a good point. The next steps is well, we will work together. Well, first of all, there'll be, of course, the innovation lab itself, which will take place somewhere in November. More details of this will be, well, will be published. So it would be great, of course, if interested people will join this innovation lab. And we have also already some ideas, but of course this, well, the exact ideas will be established together with interested parties or stakeholders. So the idea is to develop well, new techniques to measure the risk reduction of these particular nature-based solutions in Limburg, and also to figure out how to, well, with survey techniques, how to develop more, well, better ways to estimate the co-benefits, perhaps using this more holistic approach that was suggested in our breakout session. So that, yeah, that's the ideas for the next steps.
Great. Thank you a lot. And then we will keep on the eye on it and be aware of our channels where you can find more information about these innovation labs and the other ones. I think in the chat you were shared all links of all our channels that where you can follow. And now, thank you, Max, and Guillermo as well for this summary of the lessons learned from the lab number 1. Now I'll give the word to Jamie or to Anne, who were leading the breakout room in the lab number 2. So please share with us, please, your main outcomes and sessions, or any challenging that were raised, and insights from the participants, and also the next steps from this lab.
Thanks, Laura. I'll kick off and then I'll leave to Joanne and others from the lab to jump in as they wish. So lab 2 was looking at the ways in which the insurance industry and associated tools and techniques could apply to nature-based solutions within a wildfire context. And for the breakout group, we were really focusing in on what does insurance for nature-based solutions mean, and could lessons from previous case studies be applied in the case of wildfire in order to promote and enable nature-based solutions. So there are a number of themes that came up and that we discussed, and I'll just run through them, but I'm sure others can add more detail as well. So first was around the different actors in the wildfire risk management space. And I think it was clear from several participants' comments that it's a really complex, I guess, environment of actors, including individual interests, but also thinking about how communities might work together to implement nature-based solutions. And also thinking about how their perceptions of wildfire may differ from those of risk managers, and those of conservation organizations, perhaps, each of which have differing priorities and differing views on what a successful, equitable, nature-based solution might look like. And we had a fair bit of discussion around what this meant in terms of biodiversity, because we identified this tension between implementing nature-based solutions which reduce risk, but at the same time can take you further away from an optimal outcome in terms of biodiversity and the longer-term sustainability of some of these ecosystems. So a few examples were mentioned where perhaps risk managers would more on the side of risk reduction, while conservation organizations may have priorities more around biodiversity, and the outcomes in terms of what the landscape looks like, depending on which of those two you follow, can be very different. One of the other points that came up was around scaling and the need to think about wildfire at the landscape scale. And I think that's something we also identified in some of the other case studies around nature-based solutions outside of the wildfire context, where there are small-scale pilots, but in order to have these things work, really you need to think about how they can be scaled up. And then finally, we had a bit of a discussion around, is wildfire different from other types of hazards, and what kind of, I guess, risk is wildfire? And there's an interesting point here around the fact that wildfire tends to strike already stressed systems. So if you have a long period of drought, and then you have a wildfire, you've got limited capacity to cope than you might for some other acute hazards, which are less correlated with things like longer term drought, for example. So that's it in terms of the wrap up from me. I'll give one key next step and then open the floor to others to jump in. And I think the key for us as we move forward towards our Solsona meeting is making sure that we have these different groups represented in the room, because I think without having everyone around the table, it's going to be very difficult to build towards a nature-based solution with a role for insurance that will please all parties, or at least some.
Great, yeah, definitely. Like bringing all these stakeholders will be very insightful, and I think it's great that you are also having this approach. Also, like to see the perception as well, as you were mentioned. This is very important now that we, as we mentioned before, now most people are looking at this like, or having more attention because of what is happening in New York. So perception can be changing also, and as you said, like decision makers or these people who is related with reduction of risk as well. So what is the main next step, or the most important next step that people from the other innovation labs should have in mind? What is the next one? Like the next step, direct next step?
So I think it would be around thinking for these different labs around these different actors, and making sure for your specific case that these different views and perceptions are sort of thought about from the start, rather than being something that you get to the end of the lab and then bring in.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, so I hope this have also have brought more insights from what the lab number 2 we're discussing. So now I'll give the floor to Victor. So thank you, Jamie, for this summary of what it was done in the lab number 2. And now I welcome again Victor for giving us the summary of what was done in this lab number 3.
Thanks, Laura. So I would like to ask my colleague Joy, who is taking notes, to maybe feedback on one of the first and a second question, and then I'm happy to come in on the next steps. Joy, are you around?
Yes, I'm here. So the main lessons, how we kickstarted our session was just asking all our participants, what are the biggest roadblocks that they think, or what are the keywords that come into mind in combining green infrastructure, natural flood management, and insurance in the UK. So the main keywords that we got off on from the participants first was the valuation of benefits, like the struggle with soft benefits and the difficulty it is to show to investor, and how to value all other benefits. Perhaps all these benefits are not benefiting the same people, so different people are benefiting from different benefits from nature-based solutions. The second keyword was around framework and standards. We went into stacking and how you need an incentive for insurers to collectively reduce risk. It's hard to mobilize individually, seems to be, because it's so complicated enough. So you need some sort of collective incentive for everybody to come together. The third keyword that came up was around private land. There's concerns, the need for implementing nature-based solutions is often in private. How do we convince private owners to share or even lose their land for something that will kind of benefit the overall community? We went into a few ideas. So there's one idea is like, you can make this a service and you can sell it as a private landowner. Then we went into the regulations concerning all of this. There needs to be a whole new regulatory set. But there's also a conflict on what is good for biodiversity and flood risk reduction at the same time, because at the end of the day, this goes back to the idea of equity, and it's just another revenue stream for some private owners. Then there was a discussion on stormwater credits, what it is and what are a couple of examples. So we went into an example in the States. And lastly, I think the main keyword we wanted to go into was on the decreasing income levels. The prices are rising, as is inflation, and there's a big gap between people. So the solutions are distorted somehow. So people who are most in need may not be able to implement the latest technologies. So the idea is like, you have to pay attention to the equality and equity side of this, and it should be a high priority, and often investments are cut off first. And nature-based solutions is something that you don't see benefits straight away. They do take time and convincing. That's why they need investments are sometimes cut off first when it comes to when government needs to cut spending. I think that was as far as we got in our breakout session, and I'll leave it to Victor to discuss next steps, or if anything I've missed.
Great. Thanks. A perfect summary. Yeah, I think we ran a bit out of time, so I think I'm not entirely speaking on behalf of the breakout session when I outline next step. It's more sort of like some mental notes I took for the innovation lab, and I think I echo also what Jamie said, that I think we had a quite diverse group. We had people from the insurance sector, we had people from academia, consultants, and NGOs, and I think you can already see that, like, I think each of those had like their different individual perspectives, and I think it's such a complex topic where also there's different terminology used. And I think there's like, we had people also like from academia who had like very insightful experiences on sort of like implementing some of these nature-based solutions, while then there's people like who have more like knowledge about sort of like the finance aspects of it and how to actually turn this into an investable proposition. And I think bringing all these different like voices together and trying to understand each other, I think this is something in terms of like next steps that we will really want to focus on, and sort of like bringing an as diverse group as possible around the table, because we've already, from sort of like our 4 different perspectives, as I've already learned so much. I think sort of like the whole, we had one participant who was also talking about sort of these like property level resilience measures, and that's sort of like really constrained by sort of like people's individual budgets, and with sort of like the cost of living crisis and so on. I think this is something that, I mean, I've always sort of like thought of it as more sort of like large scale investors, but I think obviously one way to scale this is also having a lot of individuals involved in these activities. So I think this is something, and I feel like there's so much more to sort of understand. So I think this is something in terms of sort of like the bigger picture next steps, and like getting all these having a good map of sort of like who we need in our innovation lab. And then in more specific terms, I think I've already sort of like mentioned this webinar where we on the 14th of July, where we currently sort of like started sort of like laying it out, and sort of like will hopefully be able to sort of like send invites out soon. And also sort of like invite sort of like participants and panelists who might be interested in contributing to the Innovation Lab. And then I think it will come to the Innovation Lab itself, where I think similar to what Max mentioned, I think that depends a lot on sort of like the participants and their time they can commit to that. And but ideally we would like to kick this off towards the end of the summer, and sort of like have it running over a couple of months in the 3rd and 4th quarter of the year. And yeah, I think we'll have some information on them also on the website. So I think also for those who weren't able to join our breakout session but are still interested in the topic, or also interested in participating, and I think have like an important voice that they feel like should be heard, yeah, please get in touch. Yeah, I think that's it from lab number 3.
Great, thank you a lot. Thank you both of you for this very insightful summary. That's also very interesting, and thank you also for giving us these key dates. So I'm echoing as well what Victor just said. Please stay tuned for in our website, in the LinkedIn account. There are all these new events, new like possibility to participate, keep on going with the innovation labs are going to be published there. Have in mind that these innovation labs, as Joanne was saying, is not just for today, was not an activity that we just did today, but it's like a process. We will like to have these innovation labs going, and there's going to be another ones coming as well in the frame of the NATURANCE project. So thank you a lot for your participation. Thank you all for the moderator. Thank you also to all the moderators. So yes, please stay for a bit longer. We are going to have the wrap up of the WebStival. So I'm now going to give the floor to my I'm sorry. So yeah, I'm gonna give the floor to Alice, my colleague. So welcome, Alice, again today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you also for the seemingly very interesting innovation labs, which really, yeah, took off. And as some of you said, you ran out of time. So I think that, yeah, really is a great opportunity to then say, look, there will be a continuous conversation and work on that, and also opportunity for us to engage with you, and you sort of, if you have inspiration from this discussion show, to feel free to also get in touch. with some of the colleagues here and the work package leads in particular, partners who are leading on the work also. I have the pleasure of wrapping up our first Webstival today, and I would like to go back to something that we did at the beginning of yesterday. And I might just quickly need to also introduce myself, I just remember, because some of you might have joined fresh. So I'm Alice Ryle. I coordinate the nature-based solutions and biodiversity work here at ICLEI Europe, a global city network, and we lead the work in NATURANCE around creating a network, a community going across NBIS, adaptation, insurance, financial sectors to really make sure that we all come to one table, which clearly seems to be necessary also based on what, for example, Jamie said, that we need to sit around one table to talk and learn from each other as well. So I would like to ask the partners who lead work streams within NATURANCE to come forward. And here I would like to first of all hand the floor to Wouter from the Free University, or a colleague of his who can jump into him, because I think he had to go to another engagement, with the first question of, because you look a lot in that particular work stream, work package at sort of assessment, how to really sort of quantify, find good evidence, good methodologies of sort of understanding the risk reduction potential, the insurance mechanisms around it. What do you take away from these discussions yesterday and today? And how will that influence your work in NATURANCE?
Thank you, Alice. I will take the word here because Wouter is not here. Yes, that's indeed an interesting point that was also in the breakout session addressed quite a bit, that it's just not entirely clear what are the risk reduction aspects, at least, of these nature-based solutions, right? So one of the reinsurances that insurers or other financing parties, of course, need is to figure out how much exactly is the monetary benefit of the nature-based solutions, and for that, quite a bit of new innovation should be developed, or new modeling techniques, such as in the case of flooding, new hydrological models that can measure exactly what is the value, for example, of more vegetation on the embankments of rivers. How does that exactly reduce flood risk? The same also for, of course, forest fires, for example. So that is something, of course, that we will address in the Innovation Lab. So for this further discussion, I invite you or to follow this Innovation Lab.
Thank you, Max. Is there any last questions you might have to the audience? Is there still something you sort of heard and you wonder about how that could be answered?
Yeah, so we were talking a bit about diversification in of the different financing parties, let's say. So we have, of course, insurers, but also maybe other parties with and there might be, for example, benefits downstream if you have if you take a measure, for example, upstream, who will benefit from. So which parties, which insurers, for example, or other parties will benefit from risk reduction downstream. So I would invite maybe, another question. A question to the audience is to how can this be addressed? Maybe in our Innovation Lab. So we were talking actually I think the people from our breakout room are not in the audience anymore, so I cannot ask them to reflect on it further. But maybe anybody else.
I'm here.
Oh yeah.
Mia, then over to you.
I actually put this topic on the agenda because I'm an insurance expert. I worked in the insurance industry for more than 20 years, and in last years about nature-based solution, and And first of all, it's about each insurance has a contract with you as an insurer. So how do they know that their portfolio will benefit from an upstream using nature-based solutions upstream? Because you can change your insurer every year, or even in Norway where I work, every month. So if the insurer, the company, invest in nature-based solutions, it is to help their customer mainly. Of course, it's nice that it has a larger effect, but their focus is on who is our customer, how does our policy, our portfolio look like, and how would these nature-based solutions help risk reduction on our portfolio. And of course, to address the question from Max, is like, we just need more understanding and project to see what happens when we do the nature-based solution upstream. You know, so, and I know WWF, which I work also with in a project called the Sponge project, it's like 35%, but it doesn't really say where this 35% is actually helping, if you see what I mean. So we just need more proof. And the other thing I pointed out is that the insurance industry cannot insure a risk unless they know the effect of it. What will happen if we insure something new when there's a damage? Will it hit our portfolio? Do we have to pay out more, or do we pay out less? And this is part of the regulation on Solvency II regulation on insurance. It's very strict on this part. So it's not something they just can spend money on or put into their portfolio or their contracts. And the third point I made was like, what is nature-based solution for them? How do you define nature-based solutions in the way that they understand what it is? Is it a green roof? What does it help? Usually nature-based solution has many effects. It has many benefits, but which of them will co-benefit insurance? And for example, non-life insurance, which are paying the damage. When it comes to investment, it's a totally different topic, and it's not a non-life insurance topic. It's a life insurance topic who has large money in pension funds and look long-term. So you have to divide between investment in short term, which is non-life, and long term, which is life insurance and pension. And then you also have to divide it into what is reinsurers doing, like Swiss Re, because they have a different role than non-life direct insurers. So I think to me, it's like, what kind of data? They have so much good data. And in Norway, I worked in the finance association with banks and insurance, and we managed to have all the insurance companies agreed after some years to share their loss data. You know, what happened, when did it happen, how much did we pay out, etc., with the municipalities, with the local government, so they actually could see the effect, the impact of what was happening. Because it showed that the municipalities do not collect loss data or damage data. You know, even the flood agency doesn't have loss data. So we also brought in all these parties around the table, starting to discuss the insurance with the directorates of civil protection, of flood, and also the municipalities, to start to understand what does it mean to them, the individuals, and trying to find some sort of common understanding, like you talk about a more holistic picture. So the absolute last point is that now we're working on with hydraulic and experts that talk to each company, which is, they're not talking to all of them. They're talking to the ones that wants to do something because it's a competitive benefit. So bring the competitive benefit with you, because they're not like one big group of insurers. You know, individually they will be part of it because they can benefit in their portfolio and have a better competitive advantage. That's their focus. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank
Okay.
you, Maya. Super helpful. No, really, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I heard a couple of sort of project names and links, which you also thought about. So if you can put any of that into the chat here, I think would be great for participants today to follow up, but also for us to take notes. So I think, and Max, if you would like to come in here as well, do please do that. So the bigger picture, sort of this bringing together, there's no really instance to do that, but that's sort of really important, and to sort of go from the individual insurer's perspective to a bigger a scale of to understand the impact. But what I thought also was very interesting, yesterday we asked whether everyone who has sort of expertise on a scale from 1 not being so good to 5 to be an expert on nature-based solutions. So that sort of conveys to me the message: everyone knows what nature-based solutions are and sort of knows the definition. But clearly, as you said, Maya, we need to sort of really think about, if we want to reach new audiences, if we want to engage with each other, in this case, the insurance sector, we really need to sort of find the right wording. I'm not an insurance expert, so much of what I've heard yesterday and today is for me sort of new. So I think that's already something that within the NATURANCE project we can do to sort of really create a common ground. And also that we need to, insurers are not all the same, and that's why we also have insurance companies in here with Jamie, for example, that we need to talk about the different types of insurers we talk to and package the message accordingly. Max, I guess you took good note of that, and it'll definitely guide us in the future work. And Maya, I hope we will see more of you in the course of NATURANCE. Max, I'm not quite sure whether you have any more reflections on that still.
Not really, Alice. Thanks for the summary. I think Mia made it clear also that we have a lot of work to do in NATURANCE. So that's
wonderful. Good. Thank you so much for that. And I would move on to Joanne. Joanne, in you leading the work around sort of governance models, looking at the policy and those aspects that sort of create the structure and the enabling environment or not enabling environment also for insurance and financial solutions around nature-based solutions. What did you take away from the discussion that we started yesterday afternoon and that's ending with this session today? What will sort of shape the work that you will do in NATURANCE? You need to unmute yourself, Joanne, I think.
Unmuted. Okay, thank you. Thank
Wonderful.
you for asking the question, Alice. I think one, it's been very, very helpful. It's always very helpful when you step a little bit out of to what you're got your head into and start hearing a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ideas across the board. There's an awfully lot that goes together with the flood work, which I did for many, many years, and actually the wildfire work. So I was kind of moving, like I was very interested to hear about the applications of the community-based insurance, the NFIP in the US, and how we're looking into that, Victor, as sort of a case. Because it's a case that I had forgotten to put onto my charts, but I think it's a really interesting idea for wildfire and something that we're going to be exploring. And we explored that a little bit with Valentina in our discussion, because it turns out, of course, that wildfire nature-based solutions really takes a community effort in many cases. It's landscape management. No individual can go out and manage the landscape. So, so it truly requires a rethink of how we use insurance. And I think that opens a huge innovative opportunity and something, that kind of crosses across the flood and the wildfire. So that's one lesson. Another lesson, I think, it came out very clearly in our discussion of how serious a wildfire is individually. I mean, it's true also with floods. You have a flood in your house, this can affect you for years and years. That we're really talking about people here, and wildfire, of course, I don't know, it's almost more traumatic. Everything burns. You can't even put it upstairs. It burns, and it ruins lives. And there's little question about that, that has to be a focus of any kind of thing we do with insurance in promoting nature-based solutions, that we has to reduce risk of those kinds of risks to people. At the same time, when you get focused locally, which I think we often do, also we see this, of course, with the climate discussions, you get focused locally, you lose the larger picture. And when we think of where we are with nature, when we think that Austria, for instance, and the US, I just read, has lost 40% of its insects. And if we keep going along these routes, we're going to have huge, huge implications for our agriculture, and billions of people are going to starve. And it's very hard to keep that in mind when you start doing this trade-off. Should we have biodiversity for wildfire prevention, which doesn't lower the risk as much as some of these others? And you think about the local costs to people, but then you have to think about the global costs if we don't do it. So we have, I think we have a very, very difficult trade-off to address. And we're going to have to address it, and it comes down to insurance as well. What kinds of measures do we want insurance to actually promote? And of course, insurers are focused on promoting those local loss and damages, because as Mia pointed out to us very clearly, we have to keep in mind what are benefits and costs to insurers and their portfolios and their bottom line, and that's obvious. So I think, this is a very difficult territory we're operating in. I don't think we're going to solve it with one innovation lab, but I think we can put ideas on the table.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for this. And I think that the personal aspect of all of this is also a very important one. And as you said, sort of has sort of the way you make future decisions, and how that then looks into sort of which insurance you take out will also affect that heavily as well. Is there anything, sort of same question as I put to Max, is there any sort of open questions that you still have, which you would like to sort of maybe get answers, reflections from the audience here today?
Well, I think it'd be wonderful to have any of our, the audience here come in and reflect on what we, on this dilemma, which is really very, very much there with wildfire, and who should be at the table, who should be approaching this, and how, how our societies can actually make these very difficult choices. Somebody should solve this for us in the audience.
Are there any audience reflections, any contributions here? Do just raise your virtual hand, not the real hand, by pressing the button on the reactions down there, and then I'd be happy to sort of take any contributions. Otherwise, Joanne, we need to put that question definitely down into our sort of report, that we take that into the next exchange, either through the innovation labs or in the next festival that we will be organizing as well. But Mia, you go ahead.
Very short. I think the most important thing is that researchers, I worked in the industry for so long, but I also worked in several research projects. And I think to bring in the politicians, the whole, it was mentioned in one of the presentation, like everybody that you need to bring together. And I think that's the start of it, combined with the testing, the projects, so that you need to understand more and more what is actually the effect of this nature-based solution? What is this nature-based solution? What does it mean for each party? I work with the Oslo municipality, and they spend many months just defining for the municipality what is actually nature-based solution for us, going from gray to green to blue to to nature-based solutions. So I think to bring the people together and also bring that the researchers are sort of the driving force is, that's the most important from my experience. It takes time. So
Thank you, Mia, for that. So we'll try and do our best within the short lifetime of the NATURANCE project, but I think there's clearly this need for it, which has been reiterated again through the day. Thank you, Mia and Joanne, for those reflections. I would like to move on to Victor. You're leading an innovation lab, and you've already presented yesterday and today what you will be working on. Is there anything that sort of sticks to in your mind where you're like, that's either something we haven't thought about yet, or that's something I found surprising, and which will then sort of you will take back into the work that you will do within NATURANCE?
Yeah, thanks, Alice. Yeah, I think I'm not sure if there's like a single takeaway, but I think it was a really good reminder also, like I guess like from yesterday, I think it's quite a bit of a whistle-stop tour through sort of like we heard like Svenja talking about sort of like from an insurance perspective where they are in sort of like the more broader thinking about nature. We've heard sort of like the policy dimension from sort of like DG Klima, and I think that's sort of like, and then sort of like I have the privilege as sort of like being the work package lead on the innovation labs and basically being sort of like in contact with all the innovation labs to hear sort of like how diverse the topics and challenges are. I think sort of like it's like really interesting. I learned a lot about wildfire from Joanna and colleagues at IASA and WTW in these discussions. And I think it's just for me it's like an interesting challenge on like how much we actually need to cover, because I think all of us is an expert in something, but it's really hard to basically keep an overview. And I think like thinking about the innovation lab, I think that we just had a discussion. I think it's very interesting. I think someone from sort of like a background in ecology and knows about a lot about nature-based solutions is like saying like, well, we can do this. Why don't we do this? And then sort of like you have like someone from an insurance company saying like, oh, we are ready, but like tell us where the evidence are. Tell us sort of like how we can actually like what is the risk reduction elements of like what we had in the first innovation lab. So like how can we model it? How can we actually quantify it? Because we need this. And I think this is something that, for example, people from the environmental scientists don't really necessarily think about, while sort of like people from the insurance side have like a broad understanding. And I think also what Mia lined out, I mean, like they want a service for their clients, I think, and they don't necessarily care so much about sort of like how it works in detail. The important is that it does work. And I think I'm not even covering sort of like the governance perspectives and sort of like having the policymakers at the table who have a whole different set of like requirements. I think they are accountable to their voters. So I think this needs to be also something that's need to be acceptable to whoever vote for them, and they need to be accountable for that. So I think my reflection is that we try to sort of like bring together a lot. I feel like it's still challenging to keep an overview of all these sort of like interesting discussions and sort of like different expert inputs. But I think hopefully with the innovation labs, we getting more people together and sort of like having these conversations. And I think it will also take a while to like learn each other's languages. But I think it is an important process, and I feel like that's what NATURANCE also can really deliver on in terms of I think also what the colleagues at ICLA are doing, like bringing together these knowledge networks, because there's already so much out there, but I think not necessarily everyone is talking to each other. So I think that's some of my immediate reflections.
Thank you so much, Victor, for that. Indeed, there's so much out there sort of trying to sort this for ourselves from our sort of discipline background as individuals participating here today, but also from the project's perspective. It's really sort of, even, I mean, we're sort of honest about this. It's hard for us to see, okay, what can we concentrate on? Like what's really sort of interesting in terms of also the wider discourse outside, where sort of which topics should we focus on to then also sort of influence policy making, work with the industry, etc. as well. Do you have one question still for the audience? Is there something where like it would be great to either get an answer now, or it's something that everyone sort of takes home to think about and get back to you or ask?
Yeah, no, I have a question, especially to those who maybe also like were with us for the last 2 days and have heard through all the different presentations and aspects, because I think there's this like slight anxiety because it's such a complex topic that we just like to have a complete like blind spot. There's like something we have been missing, and maybe someone in the audience has joined the last 2 days and like had a complete or like a different set of expectations and said like, oh, like I'm actually it's a shame that you haven't covered a specific aspect of insurance and nature-based solutions. And yeah, maybe this is something I would be curious to hear if like somebody came with different expectations and would like to raise that concern.
Indeed, it's always good to be reflective. So if anyone is out here in the audience who would like to point out blind spots or something else that we need to consider, that would be really helpful for us to guide our work. You can either speak up or you can also put it in the chat message as you wish. Okay. Well, it's a complex question because, as we said, the diversity in itself was so wide, so broad. But it would be indeed helpful if we either today or then in the course of the project duration again and again come back to that question, Victor, to sort of reflect, okay, is there anything that we might have missed based on the knowledge that we also create and bring together from the different sectors as well. Thanks, Victor, for that. By the way, there's one question in the chat from Milena. Could you recommend a database of green loans and green bonds in Europe? So if anyone has an answer to that, do just pop it in the chat, either as a reply or just as a straight chat message. And I'm sure Milena will be very thankful for that as well. Good. Now we've gone through the organizations, partners that lead the work. Of course, it was always like a different partners contributing to it. And I would like to ask Yaro to come in here, because Yaro, you're the coordinator. You have sort of long experience working across sectors, of course, a lot from the climate, the insurance perspective. And it's sort of a nice lead up to the closing of the event. Of course, we want to share some information before. And what did you find particularly interesting, controversial, missing from the conversation since yesterday afternoon?
A brilliant question. Thank you very much, Elise. First of all, let me thank to all rapporteurs and all leaders of the innovation laboratories. You have done an excellent job in stimulating the discussion, making the case for these potential instruments that we will develop further. I mean, I'm really enthusiastic about these. We are at the beginning of the journey, so we laid out the plans for the initial set of the laboratories. We will explore many more. We will talk about it in a second. This is an invitation to the community to submit your ideas about how the insurance or combination of insurance and investment instrument could work with the nature-based solution and nature restoration in your neighborhood or in the areas you're working with. So this is we will concentrate in the initial months on exploring and showcasing the laboratories that you have heard about. But the scope is much larger, and we welcome your suggestion for different case studies, whether in Europe or outside. And there will be a sort of call for participation or a competition where you can submit and make case for us to really look into specific cases elsewhere and dedicated to different hazards. So this initial step is a lot just to lay out our way of working, and I was really pleased to see the willingness to participate in this journey, a willingness to contribute to the different discussion streams, also guide and steer the work of this team in collecting the relevant information, pinpointing to the relevant barriers, whether on the financial side or on the governance side. So there are many opportunities for us to engage in and exploit and work together. I think I would at this stage probably want also to share some ideas about what is our way of working. would you like to do that? I have one slide that I would like to share. So you should see it. So the first point that I wanted to reinforce, and you have heard that across the different sessions, is you are kindly invited to get actively involved in our ongoing discussion and contributed with your insight and knowledge and perspective to shaping the common baseline on the knowledge, but also contributed to the specific financial laboratories and eventually to help us to shape what we call shared design principles for nature-based insurance and investment solutions. This is very important. It's not going to materialize tomorrow, and not even this year, but it is a whole journey that is designed in order to get that. So we will have 9 innovation laboratories altogether. So you have heard about the first set of 3, but again, we will be working on 6 more, and your contribution or suggestions are welcome. This is what we call the competition for ideas that the Innovation Lab might focus on. The competition will be launched shortly, and you will find more information if you subscribe to our newsletter or if you follow our activities on the social media or on the website. So this is really a strong call and invitation to join a community of knowledge networks. We believe that together we can develop a robust base for similar instrument to make it into practice and contribute to making Europe and other places around the globe more resilient to extreme events. So this is the first, but you will also find all our results in our digital library that is accessible from the website. A part of WebStival of festivals like this one, we are organizing webinars or any type of expert gathering that might also feature your contribution, feature what you are working on, as long as this is connected to the overarching theme of this project. So there are a number of ways how to interact with us, and please do keep an eye on what we are doing and how we are doing that. Regarding the next WebStival Festival, so altogether we are committed to organize 4 gathering like this one. 2 will be virtual, like this one, and 2 are in person. So the next event will be a festival in physical presence. It is scheduled to take place in Vienna at the premises of IASA or somewhere else, and it will take place in May 2024, so in 10 months from now on. The festival might be organized also in collaboration with other projects. There are many projects that have been funded from Mission Adaptation, which is our primary pool of projects to partner with. As you know, the Mission Adaptation has a very bold goals and created a portfolio of research and innovation projects that are supposed and will work very closely together. NATURANCE is also contributing to this, although it's not funded from the budget of the Mission Adaptation, but we are labeled as one of the most important projects contributing to the Mission Adaptation, as we have heard earlier yesterday. Now, we have also means to support your participation in our activities, and this is something that I would like to call your attention to. We have financial resources to bring you to our next festival. So again, if you would like to be there with us in person, if you would like to feature your work or your contribution or your specific example, you're welcome to get in touch with us, and we will take care of your itinerary and the logistics. So this is absolutely an open opportunity. I mentioned we might combine this with the other project that is, for example, PISA project that is looking into innovative climate insurance schemes. So it is also started this month, and envisaged to have the first meeting roughly around the same period of time in May next year. So that project will explore a new climate knowledge, like seasonal decadal forecast, projections, and so on, and tailor-made it for specific purposes, again, for specific geographic spaces and conditions, but also for specific insurance companies. So we might work together with this project as well as others that have been chosen for contributing to the mission adaptation. Yeah, I believe, you know, there are many things more to say about engaging. I mentioned WebStival, I mentioned webinars, I mentioned intermediate result that will be available from our website. Any way of contributing to this, reviewing the reports, commenting on that is very welcome, and we look forward to staying in touch with you. Over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yaro, for outlining the opportunities, how we can further stay in touch. And it'll be definitely very interesting to see, hopefully, many of you next year at the festival, where we then sort of get together as a big and cross-cutting community. And of course, the innovation labs and the discussions there will already start beforehand. So there's not much more for me to say. Maybe of course, you will get as a follow-up to this WebStival's that documentation in terms of the slides. But as Laura already said, do stay in touch with us via LinkedIn. You can also sign up for the newsletter on sort of generally updates from the project by signing up and sending us an email under the naturanceproject.eu website. And there, all the information that Yaro shared on upcoming events would also be then promoted and shared with you, so that you will know of them well in advance, and then also can decide where you can bring in your expertise, but also questions you might still have to us. Yeah, I think before I say sort of official thank you, I think what we discussed since yesterday afternoon, but also today, is not just relevant because we sort of found many sort of new ideas, missing sort of links or aspects that we might have thought of, and really try to sort of bring it together. I think we have some answers, but we also have more questions, which I think is really good, because that's what we wanted also to get from you and discuss with you, so that we can then sort of take them and work on them through the NATURANCE projects, through the innovation labs, and of course all these public engagement mechanisms that we have. But I also just saw the news at the nature restoration law, where there was this critical vote today by the MEPs in the European Parliament. And it was, as many of you know, it's really sort of for the first time would be a sort of legal framework to why we need to restore nature, and would then let all of us, our local and regional, but also national governments, really take very concrete next steps and have a regulatory framework within which we need to restore nature. And I think insurance and financial aspects will play a very strong role there. And it was heavily debated over the last few days and weeks. But it seems that the news is very fresh, that there was sort of a tie within the vote, and it seems that the nature restoration law can take next steps, which also means for us that we really have a very good framework where we can also work towards because it will be something that will really impact and shape the regulatory and policy framework of the member states, and nature will just play an even bigger role. So we very much look forward really to work on this with you. And that just leaves me to say some thank yous to all of you as an audience for your great inputs and active participation. And of course, we particularly would like to thank all panelists who joined yesterday from within, but also beyond the partnership of NATURANCE, and who really sort of brought their expertise, but also were so open to listening to your experiences on the ground from the different sectors, from your different communities. And I think that, as I said a couple of times, really will enrich the work and guide the work of NATURANCE, and of course to our key note speaker, Svenja Suminski yesterday, but also the very valuable input from the colleagues from DG Klima and DG Research and Innovation, because you really showed us sort of the wider landscape and how we can connect what NATURANCE, sort of the landscape in which NATURANCE is located, how it links to the adaptation work, the nature-based solutions work through Network Nature, and many other projects that are coming up and initiatives. And yeah, I think the innovation labs, which focused on sort of investment in natural flood management in urban areas, but also sort of how to quantify the flood risk reduction and the insurance to promote our wildfire risk management. I think those were the 3 first ones which we'll start work with, and then 6 more to come over the years. And that leaves me with, yeah, wrapping up. Big thank you to the partners, big thank you to the organizers, my colleagues who were facilitating, Laura and Daniela, but also all the work package and partner lead within NATURANCE. This would have not been possible without your input. And even for me, it's really very enriching to learn from the different disciplines and that you come from and that we can bring here together through NATURANCE. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll keep you posted on what will come next with NATURANCE. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.